Good morning. Today we look at 2 Kings chapters 4 through 6. There's a lot that goes on in these three chapters, and it's dealing with Elisha, the prophet who followed Elijah, of course, and Elisha is very commonly called the man of God, and the prophet. And it starts in chapter 4 with, it says, a certain woman of the wives of the sons of the prophet called out to Elisha, saying, your servant, my husband, is dead, and the creditor is coming to take my sons into service. It wasn't uncommon, it wasn't against the law to sell a child into slavery or someone into slavery so that you would have money to be able to run your household. And so this woman had nothing left other than a small jar of oil. And she was going to sell her sons into slavery so that she could have some money to live on. And Elijah tells her to go, or Elisha tells her to go and gather all the empty oil jars from all of her neighbors, as many as she can get. And she pours oil out of this little jar that's just got just a little bit left in it. And she fills all of those jars with oil, enough so that she can sell those jars and have enough money then to live on. True miracle, and just this little bit of oil, and it just continues to come, continues to fill them all up. And next thing, then there's Elisha goes to Shunem, where a notable woman was, and she had a home, and she fixed an upper room so that every time he came, he had a place there to stay. So he evidently moved around, different places. And there was a friend of hers that had no husband and no son, and she was elderly. And Elisha said to her, next year at this time you'll have a child. And she just couldn't believe it, but she does. She has a child, and a few years later, this child becomes sick and dies. And she gets on her donkey, and she just goes full bore to find Elisha. And he sees her coming, and he sends his servant, out to find out what's going on. But she doesn't tell anything to the servant. But she comes and tells Elisha, my child is dead, and he's going to send his staff back with her, just that she may lay his staff on this child, but she wouldn't hear that, and so Elisha goes with her, and he lays himself out, on this child who is laying on his bed up in his room where she has prepared for him, and he comes again back to life, and. And then going on, there's a famine in the land, and they go out and they gather a bunch of plants from in the field, and they put it in the pot to make stew, and it's poisonous. So Elisha says, put a little bit of flour in it, and then it is no longer poisonous. And the flour didn't have that capability. It was the belief, the trust in God's actions that way. And then the feeding of 100 men from just a few loaves of bread. And this, it's like the manna in the wilderness. It was just always enough. Or it's like Jesus feeding the 5,000 with, just a little bit of meager food that he had. It's a way of showing that God has control, power over the heavens and the earth and everything that's in. Chapter 5 deals with Naaman. He's the commander of an army, a very valiant commander of an army. And in fact, in verse 1 of chapter 5, it says that because by him, Naaman, the Lord had given victory to Syria. So here's this the king of Syria has this commander, Naaman, and God is favoring this commander, Naaman, and he's a foreigner, just weird. But his military might and his powers are attributed to God's blessing of him. But he has leprosy, which we're aware is a very serious disease. It affects the skin of the body, and you are to be an outcast and not have contact with people. But his Naaman's wife has this a slave girl that's captured, an Israelite girl, and this girl says, "Oh, if only my Lord Naaman was in Israel, where this man of God would be able to heal him." So the king of Syria sends word to the king of Israel, heal my servant Naaman. And the king of Israel is, "Hey, I can't do anything. What's he? Is he trying to pick a fight with me? And it's he's beside himself with this request because he knows that he's powerless. But then he's reminded of the man of God. And so they send Naaman then to Elisha. And Naaman and his servants are there. And they knock on Elisha's door, and he says, "Well, just, go out and wash in the river Jordan 7 times, and you'll be okay." And Naaman he's upset. Elisha won't even come out and see him, won't even come out and talk to him. He's an important man. He's a commander of the army of Syria. And Elisha just sends, "We'll go wash in the little river over here." And, he's just not going to do it. He says, the other rivers are so much more stronger, more powerful. But Naaman's servant is smart enough to say to him, if Elisha, the prophet, the man of God, had told you to do something super hard, dangerous, whatever, you would do your very best to do it. So why not, when he gives you an easy task, to go and do it? So he goes and he washes, and he is healed, completely healed. And he comes back to pay Elisha, to give him something, and Elisha refuses. He doesn't want anything. And Naaman and his men take off. But Elisha's servant goes running after him, and he thinks my master was just too easy on this guy. So he goes after him, and he asks for some money and some other stuff, and he's going to pad his own pocket, and Elisha will never know, but Elisha does know. And his servant comes back, and Gehazi is his name, and Elisha says to him, "The leprosy that Naaman had will now be yours." And he is taken down then with leprosy as well. He's white as snow, it says. The chapter 6, they were out cutting down some wood to make beams to make a house that they would live in, and this axe head flies off of the handle and falls into the water, and of course it sinks. And how do you find an axe head in the water? It's going to be on the bottom. It's tough. But Elisha asks, in verse 6 of chapter 6, "Where did it fall?" And he cuts off a piece of the stick, he throws it in the water, and the axe head floats to the top. Metal does not float. An axe head is heavy. But it's again, the miracle that comes from God. It's not Elisha. It's not anything of Elisha. It's God. And it's Elijah's trust in God. And it's the trust also that God puts into Elisha, knowing that he's going to do the right things. The chapter 6 goes on with a battle coming up now then. And the king of Syria, Naaman's was the king, the war leader of Syria, but the king of Syria comes against Israel, and the man of God, says to the king of Israel, "Beware that you don't pass," because the Syria, and there's a warning of it. But they come, and they're worried about all that is there. So he sends his horses and his chariots and a great army. They come by night and surround the city. And again, the man of God rose early and went out there and saw that. And his servant says, "What shall we do? What are we going to do? Here we are surrounded. We're hopeless." And Elisha says, "Do not fear, for those who are with us are more than those who are against us." And, the Lord is there protecting and leading and guiding. And Elisha then prays, "Lord, open his eyes that he may see." So, verse 17, "The Lord opened the eyes of the young man, and he saw. And behold, the mountain was full of horses and chariots of fire all around him. So when the Syrians came down, Elisha prays and says, 'Strike this people with blindness.'" And all the Syrians then were struck with blindness. And so again, it's God working through Elisha to protect his people. And it's, so on and on and on. We see, that God is faithful to his people, but the people just continue to sin. Chapter 6 ends with a famine. Syria besieges Samaria, finds themselves there, and Elisha is sitting in his house and waiting, but he has fallen out of favor with some of these enemies, and they want to kill him and take his head. And so it ends, chapter 6 ends with the threat on Elisha's life by these foreigners that, Elisha has, I don't know, how do I say it, used the power of God, or the power of God has worked through Elisha, and these others are upset and ready and wanting to have an end to this man of God.